Welcome to Experience, your weekly dose of well-being, all wrapped up in a current affairs wrapper. This is where we take what's happening in the world, be it the news headlines, current affairs, or what's going on maybe down your street, and we look at it from a psychological perspective. We look at how that is driving human behaviour, and as a result, have a nice good old chat with myself and Peter Kinderman. Peter, hello.
I have to say that I'm recovering from a camping expedition, and so there's a balance between feeling miserable and enjoying the luxuries of life. So I'm somewhere in the balance between the two.
Okay, so you're in Nirvana right now after the hells of being in a campsite. Nice town, though.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love camping myself, but I take it it's not for you.
No, I like luxury, and camping and luxury aren't the same thing.
Well, you're going to have to try some glamping. Were you not in a yurt? You're doing it all wrong.
I was in a small and wet tent.
Well, at least the garden got some rain then if it was wet. That's the important thing. This week, we're going to be talking about A-level results day, because that is what is going to be going on up and down the country in lots of people's living rooms as young people get more and more anxious. And before you switch off, you must remember that it takes a village to raise a child, and whether you are a mum, a dad, a student yourself, or an aunt or uncle, a grandparent, a neighbour, or even a future employer of these young people, we all have a vested interest in making sure that it goes well for them. But anyway, we're going to be talking about it from a psychological point of view. So you're going to get handy hints and tips on how to handle disappointment, about how you can look to making better life choices, and indeed about some hints and tips about how to make friends and make connections with people that will actually work. So that's what our subject's going to be, Peter. But perhaps before we get started with that, you could let us know a little bit about the teenage brain, because it's still developing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's developing physically. I think the current sort of vague age that people are talking about when brains become more or less adult is around 23. So teenagers physically developing. The most obvious sign of this is that young people wake up late in the morning. And there's a straightforward biological reason for that, which is when you're my age, cortisol levels, a stress hormone effectively, an alerting hormone, peak at about 4:30 in the morning. So you wake up at 6, or start to peak at 4:30 in the morning. You wake up.
I just thought it was my bladder.
It's bladder, it's prostate, it's arthritis, but it's also cortisol. And when you're about 15, your cortisol levels don't start to rise until about 10 in the morning. And so kids find it physically more difficult to wake up in time. One of the most insane things that we do as a society is we say, well, we've got working people, working day starts somewhere between 8 and 9. So we'll start the school day then. The schools are a big building, they have kitchens, but no, we won't actually put on any childcare in the morning. And no, we won't do breakfast for the kids. What we'll do is we'll start at like 8:30 in the morning, work through till 3 when all parents are working, forcing them then to provide childcare, and teach the kids in the period of the day when their brains are less receptive to working.
Right.
I think that one of the things that we could do to massively improve the performance of the UK would be to start school at 11. Have childcare between 8 and 11, school at 11, finish school at 6, perfectly attuned to the teenage brain, and life would be much better. It genuinely would be much better. I haven't been able to persuade anybody to do it, but yeah, physically, teenage brains are not fully developed yet.
This does become a bit of a debate quite often about whether teenagers should start school later on in the day. But may I just say, as the parent of a 17, 18 and 19-year-old children, yes, they are that close together, that 11 o'clock is just not late enough. I have one child who regularly is nocturnal, so wakes up at 6 p.m. and goes to bed about 8 in the morning, something like that.
It's a well thought through balance between the needs of the child, which is as late as possible, and the needs of the adults, which is kind of like a decent working age. But anyway, the thing about cortisol and teenage brains being not yet adult, and you can see it in the cortisol levels, tells us that teenage brains aren't terribly well developed. It's a vaguely interesting fact, I think, that a lot of the learning that happens is actually with a reduction in the number of synapses that we have. So So what we do as we learn is we prune abstract connections. So there's this phrase, I think is William James, a blooming, buzzing confusion of the infant brain. And all of the connections, like between the visual cortex and between the motor cortex, all of these connections, all of these dendrites in the brain get pruned down over time. So adult brains have fewer synapses per square millimeter than do kids' brains. And that pruning is still going on when people are hitting adolescence. There's also, probably more importantly, there's the non-physical stuff going on. So kids are selfish. It's difficult for kids to appreciate the perspective of others. It just, they need to learn it. I mean, they need to learn it morally, and they're selfish in the sort of capital S sense of selfish, but they're also selfish in the small s. So they don't take other people's perspectives. So, if you say, even with small kids with food, you go, look at all these other people. All of these other people are enjoying the food. They must think it's delicious, including kids of your own age. And they go, no, it's horrible.
Wow.
It's just difficult for them to take on perspectives.
Growing up in the 70s, may I say that the 70s version of that was, if you don't eat it, I'm passing it up and sending it off to Africa for people who don't have any food. And may I tell you, that also did not make me want to eat my food either. Although it did give me a great dose of Catholic guilt.
Yeah, it made you resentful of your parents. It doesn't work.
No, not resentful, just guilty. It was all my fault.
So when you get sort of 14, 15-year-olds with GCSEs, and when you get 17, 18-year-olds, I mean, they like to think that they're knowledgeable and sensible about the world, but they simply don't have the perspective. And they would like to think that they're perfectly formed human beings, but they still got another 6 years of neural development left. So sometimes decisions have to be made in their best interest. That's just the way it is.
Do you know, it really does remind me of last year's results day. The reason that I can talk with a little bit of authority on this is professionally I've worked a lot with the education bodies like UCAS and the Student Room, and have been there holding the hands on results day of the chief exec. But equally, as a mum, I went through this last year, and what I really saw was someone who wanted to be an adult making those decisions, but was so needing their hand holding through the whole process. So you have to kind of love them through it, and remember that all behaviour, even if they are punching your fridge at the time, is communication about their frustration, and they haven't yet got the skills to be able to process that more rationally.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of young people, especially if there's disappointment, they have an idea of how they would like the world to be, but no real idea of how to get from here to there.
Yeah.
So if you have a single trajectory mapped out, and then the results come in and it diverts you from where you're wanting to be, you still have your vision of where you want to be, but you don't have the trajectory mapped out, and all you can do at that point is use the technique that you've used for the past 17 years, which is to moan and demand things of your parents. Make it happen. How are we going to make it happen? I don't know. Just make it happen. And that's the position we're left in.
It is. So we're going to talk about what you can do between now and results day on Thursday. But also after that, we will go on to how to handle Thursday itself and the results coming in, and maybe some of that disappointment. And then we're going to take you beyond that and about how you can prepare for, quite a big step. Leaving home for the first time is most often what is happening for these young people at that time. So that's all what we're going to be covering. But in the lead up between now and Thursday, as a mum, I've got some advice, and you're going to come on and give your advice as well as someone who's been closely related to universities. In fact, how are you doing as a former professor? Because,
No, I'm still a professor.
I'm
just former salaried professor.
Yes, okay, sorry. Yes, I must remember that title. I apologise. It's very important to your identity, as we've been exploring over the last few weeks. You have been teaching me so well, Peter. So as someone who no longer works with the university, are you a bit bereft this week to not being involved in the hot seat on the day as those young people frantically try and get into your university?
No, not at all. It's hell. And very, very difficult. So the universities themselves spool themselves up for results day because they know they're going to get, first of all, they need to manage the throughput. They need to know who's coming onto their courses. So over a period of time, you get the data in, you see how your courses are filling up, and there it goes. It is quite stressful for the universities because there are financial penalties for missing your targets. There also, and the financial penalties, to be honest, so I was quite senior in management in the universities, and if you're talking about financial penalties, it's rather foolish to go, oh, it's all money. The point is, if you miss out on your targets by £100,000, then you lay off or fail to appoint 2 more lecturers. It makes a difference to real people's employment and their pensions and their mortgages and so forth.
And our kids' education.
So hitting your targets is quite important. So the universities are quite stressed. They also, of course, want the kids with the good grades. So they want to improve their teaching performance from that side. They don't want their students to be disappointed. They certainly don't want kids to be coming on their courses where they're disgruntled that it's there. So the universities have a very strong interest in getting it right. So they put on extra staff, and there are people managing the phone lines. And there's a period of discussion between the universities and the clearinghouse. So it's a very stressful period of time for them. And they are very well aware that it's a stressful time for the parents and the students. And half of them are going through it themselves. So half of the people manning the phone lines talking about the entry grades for their course are people whose their own kids have just got the envelopes in the post as well. And sometimes good and sometimes bad. So it's very stressful for the universities. I was never manning the phones, so I didn't have that stress. But I certainly don't miss it. It's a horrible period of time, and the best you can hope for is that after a couple of weeks it's settled down and gone away. From the university's point of view.
Well, it has been a really huge bun fight, and in some ways that's quite useful for students as we go forward. The dip in international students meant that it's got even more opportunities now for our young people. So at the moment there's headlines appearing about how grades are being dropped and how universities are making more offers than ever before, and more young people will get into their first choice than ever before. And that's great to reassure your young people in the lead up to Thursday, reassuring them that, a huge proportion of you will get into your first choice, that Russell Group universities are dropping their grades. Say I saw one that's gone from A star AA down to a triple B offer. You've got other courses that may be traditionally AAB going down to BCC. So there are going to be opportunities for young people. So that's something you can reassure them about, definitely in the lead up. But I've got some practical tips that perhaps might be useful to try and engineer over the next couple of days. I sat down with my young person last year on the night before A-level results day and said, okay, let's just map out what you think is going on. I know you're nervous about what your grades are going to be and whether you've got into your first or even into your reserve choice. What would you actually, in an ideal world, all things being equal, what do you want to study? And they said to me, PPE. And I said, well, that's really interesting because you haven't actually applied for PPE at all on your UCAS form. No, they said. Right, okay, so we now know that in the ideal world is what you would like to study. Not history, not politics, but PPE. That's philosophy, politics and economics. Yes, they said. So we go and get the envelope on the day. And indeed, it wasn't what he wanted. They didn't want to have a reserve choice either, because their reserve choice was not the university that they thought their reserve choice actually was. So all around, it was a massive, massive disappointment for this young person. But there is hope. Because of that conversation, because I knew PPE was the absolute ultimate choice of course that they wanted to do, it really focused our brains when it came to clearing. So we knew what we were looking at. So that's my first tip. Have this conversation first. Bank some sleep tonight, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, whenever it's going to be, because you're going to need that sleep. On the Wednesday night, I didn't get any sleep at all ahead of the results day because we were up just trying to manage the stress of my young person. So you really do need to hold their hand, would be my advice. But maybe, we're just doing this modern parenting where we don't cut the apron strings early enough. But I did really feel that this young person needed it as it went up to it. So take them cups of tea, except they're going to be surly. Try and find different ways to have a conversation. Take them out for a Starbucks or a Costa or other coffee places are available. Talking in a car, I find sometimes quite useful, because then they're not feeling your gaze directly upon them. So those are all the practical things I would say to start doing now. You can even register for clearing alerts at universities of their choice already. And you can go onto the student room and onto UCAS and find out more about clearing and other things and other places where your young person may want to go. The idea being that you've got them if things go wrong. We hope that it won't go wrong. What could you do to help them manage their nerves, Peter, in the lead up to Thursday? Because that wait gets harder and harder, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think that there's a tendency for parents to think that if they've got a nervous child, and possibly a nervous child that they as a parent are a bit worried about, then the thing to do is to reassure and make everything nice. But I think on this particular situation, there are a series of actions that need to happen if the kids are disappointed. And I think it's worth surviving the potential anger and disappointment and frustration of the child by having the conversation about what if you don't. I think the other thing is that if our concern as parents is that our kids aren't really kind of aware of the dangers, that they do stupid things because they're naive, then we shouldn't be naive. If you look at the statistics, and the statistics are the statistics, very, very competent people have spent quite a lot of time making plans for our children. So if their predicted grades are 2 C's and a D, and they're hoping for 3 A's, either something has gone bizarrely wrong in the education system for the past 2,000 years, or that is giving you some useful information. And in that instance, it's probably wise to prepare for bad news. If it turns out to be good news, all of that irritating preparation will be, "You're really stupid, Dad. Why on earth did you doubt me?" And we can get rid of that. But if it turns out to be bad news, then you're suddenly in the territory that you need to be in, and you have the clearinghouse numbers and you have the plan. And the plan includes, what do you want to do? If you got enough grades to go to clearinghouse with the clearing system with reasonable confidence that you'll get into another university, what sort of university, where do you want to go, what would you accept, what would be acceptable to you, would you be happy with that, or do you want to take some time, take a gap, and have all of those discussions? Because then, if it turns out to be the worst of all possible news, then you implement plan C. If it turns out to be disappointing, then you implement plan B. If it's great news, then you open the champagne. And it makes life a little bit better, because even if you're going to implement plan B and go, right, well, that is disappointing, we were kind of prepared for that, so let's do plan B, you've then got endless hours of waiting for the phone to answer and looking at websites where the grades keep on changing, and you see that there are 7 places available, and then you press refresh and there aren't any. And it's good to have a plan.
And it is important that you can frame this so it isn't you being disappointed in your children or expecting them to fail. That's why I phrased it with my child of, in an ideal world, what would you like Thursday to look like? Where would you like to be going after Thursday? What would you like to be doing? But equally, there is a whole, this is common sense. You wouldn't get on a boat if there weren't enough life jackets for every person that was going onto that boat. All you're doing is getting them a life raft ready, and hope you don't go onto a boat thinking it's going to sink, but you want to know that if something does go wrong, that you've got yourself covered, don't you?
Yeah, so, one way to think of it is, it would be nice that if you, as a child, were at every point in your life, there's an option or an opportunity or a challenge, and every time you're asked a question, you give the perfect answer to it. Every time you're set an exam, you get 80-90% in your exam. Every time there's a job interview, you're the one chosen as the candidate. Every time that you see a glint on the pavement, it turns out to be a £10 note. Every single time. But it's so unlikely to be the case. What's much more likely is that you really want to be James Bond, who sometimes steps on a banana skin. And when James Bond steps on a banana skin, what sort of recovery do you want James Bond to have? When James Bond opens the door and somebody hits him on the back of the head with a kosh, how do you want him to get out of that difficult situation? So there's what does the expert human being do when confronted with a situation that's a little bit more challenging than they expected? Because it certainly will happen. And if it doesn't happen at clearing, it'll happen in your first year at university. I mean, for me, I did quite well in my A levels. So I got my first choice university. So I packed my rucksack, I went off to university, and then I thought, shit, these people are all much cleverer than me. And
No,
so
it can't be true.
Well, it absolutely was. And my challenge came not with the A-level results. My challenge came with performance in the first year at university. But there's still a challenge. So I think that we need to think about, it would be great if the A-level results day were everybody gets what they hoped for. But there will be challenges in your life. And this is actually, it's not a good opportunity. It's just the necessary opportunity to do the preparation for what if it turns out that your aspirations need to be rejuggled. And yeah, this leads on to it's a challenge, not a condemnation of the person.
Absolutely. And I do think of life as being, the art of gracefully pivoting all the time, because obstacles come into your way and you have to be able to go round them or over them. Sometimes you have to plow on through them. But essentially, to give our young people the idea that there is never going to be any obstacles for you to get over, and to not be equipped with how you get over those obstacles is actually really bad for their resilience, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you can teach them really important lessons now, which is, so you can ask exactly what you were saying, what do you hope for? What's your aspirations? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to study? And they'll go, I'm really hoping to go to Birmingham to study aeronautical engineering because Tesla, Elon Musk, space, that's what I want to do. And then you can ask what happens if you don't get the grades, and you do all of that. You can also ask, because really we should be doing the preparation over a few days rather than 5 minutes. You can also ask why. Mm-hmm. Because if the answer is I want to go to Birmingham to study aeronautical engineering because then I'll get involved in high-tech engineering of the future, which is what I really want, then you go, okay, if you don't get your grades, how can you still be involved in high-tech engineering of the future? So you can focus the kids on their longer-term teleological goals, as in, what's important to me in my life, and see the A-level results as a stepping stone towards that. If you don't get your A-level results, you still have your goal, but you think of a slightly more wiggly route in order to get it. Hence,
absolutely. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Yeah.
You can do it. You can now do doctoral level apprenticeships. So change tack, go round the obstacle, find a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the lead up, there's plenty that you can be doing to support your young person. And it's a really good bit of advice for life, isn't it? To be thinking really about some life goals going forward for yourself, and then starting to make steps about how you could see yourself making those little stepping stones towards where you want to go.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I genuinely don't want to reveal too much about my own personal experience, but there is this phrase about you're only as happy as your least happy child.
Oh, yes.
It is possible to sit down with your children and discuss their university choices, and then deal with A-levels day, and then deal with clearing, and then find that by carefully engineering the situation to make sure that your child gets into a decent university, you've made them completely miserable, and you have to change tack. Because the answer to the question, why do you want to go to Birmingham, might be because I want to work in aeronautical engineering, to which the answer to the response is why, and ultimately is because I want to feel successful and happy in life and to generally do good and feel good, which is why sitting in a cold basement in Milton Keynes is probably not a good idea. And if we force our children into the universities that we want, happy children are most important things.
How do we get young people to handle that disappointment when they open that envelope and it isn't what they were hoping for? What would you say as a psychologist? How can we support our young people?
I suspect the answer as a psychologist is parents usually know their children better than experts. And the idea of saying, never mind, give them a hug, there's always next time might work for some. The idea of going, okay, we're going to deal with this, will work for some. Saying, right, what are you going to do will work for others. Saying, we've had this discussion, what did we say we would do yesterday, probably would be the best thing to do. I think, as I'm going to say later, I think what we as parents need to do more than anything else is go, okay, well, we'll take this on the chin, rather than, oh my God, what bastards, how terrible that they didn't, right, we're going to challenge these. We just go, right, okay, we need to deal with this. I think we need to return to, okay, how do you feel about it, and do that. I think one thing we could do is just for the first few minutes after the disappointing envelope opens, we do the little bit of going, okay, what do you want to do about this? How are you feeling about this? And then stop them making impulsive decisions at that point. So rather than saying, right, immediately we're going to do X, just go, well, let's not do X yet. Let's just think about it for a while.
Absolutely.
And
remember to tell them that you love them, that they're more than just those results. They're excellent, at telling jokes, or they're wonderful to their little sibling. They have other strengths than just the academic. And it's also not the time, is it, for I told you so. I told you didn't work hard enough. No, let's park all of that. Recriminations are not for now.
Absolutely not. I mean, in about 3 months' time, you can point out that if the little bastard had done some revision, then it would have all been different. But wait 3 months before you do that, because, and also wait until they say it and then go, yes, I had thought that. I think you're right. I think the thing, like I say,
I've been waiting a long time for my eldest to accept that, or to proffer that.
There is an element of you do have to play the long game, which is kind of quite useful, really. Which I'll come on to in a second as well. But I think that I think the idea of not necessarily saying, well, you haven't done very well at maths, so you won't get to Durham, but you're good at sports. I'm not so sure about that. I think that you wouldn't necessarily say this out loud, but the better strategy is to say, you're just a brilliant human being. You'll be able to deal with this. Just take it on the chin. Come on. You're
amazing. Amazing, wonderful. You give the best cuddles, whatever it might be. Obviously, they're teenagers, so they're not probably not cuddling.
The female equivalent of James Bond, and I think it's Eve from Killing Eve. It's like, that's who you are. So, okay, minor disappointment. You're stuck in the loo in a Moscow nightclub with bad guys outside the door. Come on, you can get out of this easy. So, not necessarily don't worry about it. You're really good at writing birthday cards, but more don't worry about it. You're a superb human being. You'll find your way to success with this minor. Maybe take them again, or maybe go to a different university. Of course you'll be able to survive these things, because I think when you're talking about A-level grades, the reality of the situation is that people do have a plan for how they're going to move forward in a particular direction. So an immediate vault faster, maybe you could go into competitive football, is probably,
yes, let's be realistic.
And lots of support. And also there is a big element for parents, which is when the A-level envelopes open, if the kid has got what they want and they're happy, then you just drop all of the stuff that you're preparing mentally. But if the results are disappointing, then what you have to do is accept and absorb an awful lot of, if you'd got me that iPad, it's all your fault, Mum, and the slamming door, because you just have to accept that for a couple of days.
Absolutely.
That's the game.
What I would suggest as well is that if you can, do not accept invites to have like a celebratory breakfast with other parents and their young people on the day, because your young people, if it hasn't gone well, do not want to go anywhere near that. So be mindful of the fact that they will be embarrassed, they could be humiliated, and they need to have that space. But the other thing is, if you're on holiday, if you're at work, make sure you've got things where you can either get to a Wi-Fi, you can be there, you can support your young person, and really make sure that they've got someone with them. If you can't be there yourself, how are you going to make sure that young person is supported? I think is really important.
I did clearing for my daughter, sat by the side of a lake in southern France, and it was quite stressful.
Yes. Absolutely. You need to make sure you've got Wi-Fi. That's 100%.
Sure, and a pen and a piece of paper. Yeah. Treat it a bit. The image that comes to mind is when you're trying to get tickets for Glastonbury, which I have never managed to do. You have a pad with 5 laptops. That's the way to do it. So you have a laptop open with the clearing details. You have a laptop open that can look at different universities.
Yeah.
You have mobile phones. You write numbers down. Just treat it like a bit of a plan. And again, if you don't need to implement the plan, fine, drop it all, but have it ready.
Well, last year, as I said, my eldest told me that their best course, the best outcome for A-level results day would be to get into a good university to study PPE. And of course, the results hit, and they were 100% convinced that that life that they had envisaged for themselves was entirely over. And then I found a place on PPE at a Russell Group university. And so I was on the phone, and they're rampaging. Why are you doing that? Why are you wasting your time? Blah, blah, blah. You know, on and on and on at me. Like, you know, there's no point. It's just not worth it. I can't get anywhere. Just total doom and gloom merchant. It was just so hard to see them going through that. So, of course, I hung up because I thought, well, I can't, if they answer and you're rampaging. And then it was, why have you hung up? Why have you done that? Oh, my God, no, get back on. Oh, no, all the places will go. So I was like, okay, well, if you're quiet, we'll call again and make sure. And then, of course, when the phone answered and they were having a chat with my eldest about getting onto this course, my eldest kind of went, yeah, what's up? And you're just like going, oh my goodness, you need to be making a good impression. But the guy on the phone actually laughed. They're so used to young people. So do not be afraid of that. They understand goodwill out. And, you know, they got onto that course. They got onto PPE at a Russell Group university. And there are so many options now. It is available to them. But equally, as you said, there are other things that can be done for a year, aren't there? There are great you can do lots of volunteering now abroad and things like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I wouldn't, well, I probably would say it to a young person. I think that following, but as a result of Blair opening up the universities, which is generally a good thing, I think when I went to university, the default was that about 80% of people didn't go to university. So the 20% of people who did go to university then got into what were then still called graduate jobs. Mm-hmm. Now, because more than 50% of people go to university, I think it does put you at a disadvantage in the jobs market if you don't have a degree. I think there is more of a pressure for people to go to university, and I think that I'd be more encouraging of kids to spend another 3 years in education now than when I went to university. I mean, I wanted a particular sort of career, and therefore the university was the route in. But starting my own business or working in a craft would have been perfectly acceptable. Now, there are degrees in everything, including craft. So if you want, if you're interested in the performing arts and you want to be a stage lighting director or you want to be a costume director, people do degrees in it, right? So I think there is more pressure to go to university, and I think it's more valuable. But you can wait. So just as an example, for the past sort of 3 or 4 years, my son has been working as a butcher and earning more money than me. But for technical reasons involving visas, he's now thinking that he might go back and do a master's degree, which he can. So I think you can choose your moments, you can choose your time. It hasn't saved any money, by the way, which is.
Well, that's also young people.
But I think there are more opportunities and more flexible routes for studying.
Well, and there has really been a massive debate about whether we are over-educating our young people. And to me, you can't over-educate anyone. But I do understand that we haven't had the same parity with technical skills in our environment. And we've constantly gone and looked at Germany or Switzerland really as being the paragons of virtue when it comes to giving people the parity of the technical route as well. And I think that's of benefit to our nation if we could get that right. And I know that's on Burnham's agenda, isn't it, to try and sort out the technical. But when he talks about reindustrialising the country, with AI, I'm just not 100% convinced. I mean, actually, what are the jobs going to be? And I suppose the AI-proof jobs are probably plumbers and electricians. So all is not lost if you don't go to university. As long as you do keep learning, you learn through life. You don't just learn at university, do you? And that's important, to be open to learning, I think, as you go forward.
Yeah, and I mean, all sorts of things. And again, I think the undergraduate degree does have certain advantages for people, but there are lots of people I'm meeting who are, I suppose, in their 30s and 40s who are doing MBAs or other forms of business administration degrees, because as well as learning the technical skills of their craft, whatever it is. They're also wanting the educational input to improve their ability to perform in the marketplace, in the workplace, and so forth. And again, this can come back later. And again, why? I mean, for me, education was a way of escaping from home, because at 18, I was unlikely to get a job immediately on getting my A levels that would allow me to live independently in a flat, because who does?
Yeah.
Back then, who did? But going to university, I was basically given free accommodation for 3 years, so great. So off I went.
It's not quite the same these days, though, is it?
It's not quite the same these days,
No.
but there are loans, and one of the things about, again, the Blair agenda and student loans is that I've heard debates in very senior rooms in academia about whether loading debt onto young people makes it difficult for them to go to university, or the fact that you can apply for a student loan and get it means anybody can go to university. So I think, the argument goes backwards and forwards there as well.
Well, I mean, fees are a lot, aren't they? I think they've gone up this year to 9,700 and something. And of course, with your living costs as well, if you're getting nearly another £10,000 worth of loan for your living, it's no wonder that more young people are actually living at home while they're working. I reached out to UCAS actually to get some stats on how young people are finding it. And in their top 3 concerns, having enough money and worrying about budgeting was up there, and more young people now than ever before are actually working. I don't know if it's ever before, but certainly it's been an increasing trend over the last few years, is to have to work and earn while you learn, because they just can't afford it otherwise.
Which is bad. When I went to university, you could lose your place at university if you had a job, because the point was that you were supposed to be spending 100% of your time focusing on your studies. I didn't spend 100% of my time focusing on my studies, but
what were you doing?
Oh, stuff. Generally learning, becoming an adult, becoming a human being rather than a robot, really, mainly. Learning how to interact with other human beings, which was kind of a skill that I had to learn, I think. So I don't think we should organise higher education in the way that we organise it at all. I mean, I've been to Norwegian universities quite a lot, and the conversation because I engineer it this way, the conversation with Norwegian colleagues is, "Ooh, what a lovely campus you have. Yes, it's been recently rebuilt by the state. Right. Have you had to borrow any money in order to rebuild your campus? Of course not. The state builds the campus for us. So you've been using student fees in order to well, there are no student fees because the state pays for everything. And your salary seems to be very high. Well, of course, because I'm a university professor and I'm valued by the state. So the state pays my salary because they just pay for everything. Why? Because it's really, really a good idea, when you go to the doctor with a sore throat, to have a doctor who's had a decent education. It's just an investment in the future. So you walk around Norway and everybody's intelligent and they understand. They go, "Oh," they go, "Andy Burnham. So are there any tensions between the sort of southern political elite and the sort of northern powerhouse issue?" And you go, "Hang on, how do you understand these things in such depth when they're actually conversed in a foreign language?" And they go, "Because the Norwegian government has decided to invest in education rather than make the students pay for it." I mean, that's basically what happens. You spend 3 years studying, basically the liberal arts, the arts that you would choose to study if you had the time and money on your hands to study them, and it's paid by the state, and it's a wonderful. So I wouldn't put students into debt, but given that that's the way that we work, definitely I'd take it. I mean, I think I would go to university in a heartbeat, even if it meant loading myself with debt right now.
We have one of the best education systems, and it really does upset me every year when they talk about things being dumbed down. So many leaders around the world are educated in our universities. It is unbelievable. It is such a massive soft power that we have to be able to have influence in the world. That and the BBC are 2 things really we should be so proud of in our country and really get behind, because what it projects is an image of Britain, really, that does enable us to punch above our weight, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and from my perspective, maybe particularly in psychology, but I think generally in science, British universities are also innovative. So certainly in psychology, what you see is innovative research in UK universities, which then get translated to American university, where they put tens of millions of pounds into running studies that basically confirm what the UK university found in the first place. And if that's what they want to do, great. But I think we're kind of like the meerkats of the university world. We're nimble and swift, and we cobble things together out of sticky tape and old loo rolls, and then say, "Wow, look, we've created a battery that works 10 times more efficiently than somebody else's." And then
the meerkat with the blue Peter badge. There you go. That is an image I'd not thought was going to come into my head when it came to describing our university sector, but I like it. I'm going to take it. When UCAS looked at young people as well and their experience of going off to uni, it was meeting people is one of the many things that they're looking forward to. 72% expect that they'll have to adjust to a new environment. No shit, Sherlock. 48% expect they'll be developing their social skills, just like you. But the concerns that they have, 71% are worried about making friends, which is no surprise at all, is it? Now, last year, there was a masterclass here from my eldest, who has had a very tight-knit group of friends for their entire school career. And it's not really got bigger than, say, 3 or 4 people, but they've been consistent. So I was a little worried about how they were going to cope going off to university and making friends when they're not gregarious in nature naturally. They do like to keep themselves to themselves with a select few. And what they did was, straight away, they got onto WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups to connect with other students at their college, their university, their course, so that they had people who they were interested in talking to. But it even went more granular than that. They sort of siphoned off, and those who had particular interests became WhatsApp friends as well. And for the next few weeks, between A-level results day and going off to university, all times of the day, there they were communicating with these people. So much so, I moved them into their university accommodation, and then they spent the next 2-3 days helping other people they'd met move in as well, which gave them a little tight-knit community and also got them a girlfriend. I mean, you can't say fairer than that, can you? So that was a masterclass, and that's the sort of thing that we did not have when we went to university. This technology is a brilliant way for young people to connect and communicate with each other, isn't it?
It is. It's also a way of being bullied, of course, and there's quite a lot of bullying going on WhatsApp and so forth. So we need to be careful. I mean, I think there is a tendency, if you're nervous about such things, to be a little bit distant and reserved, and then there is a slight difficulty because relationships forge quite quickly, and if you see that other people are bonding and you've held back a bit, and then they're tight friends, and it's more difficult to get involved. So I think start early and gently. And certainly I come back to my tip from last week or before, which is just ask people questions. I mean, the best possible thing you could do with anybody is just go, "Oh my God, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that." So, if Andy Burnham comes past and he goes, "Oh, I like your T-shirt," you go, "Well, that's really interesting, Andy. Tell me more. Well, why do you find it so interesting?" And they can't do anything other than engage, and then they're engaging with you, and that's basically what you want is people engaging with you. So ask lots of questions of people, and there's nothing more fascinating than somebody who's interested in you. That's what people like. So get engaged, ask questions, find out.
One of the things that I think works is, should we grab a coffee? I made my best friend in the queue about to sign on to my course, and we bonded over taking the mick out of somebody who was in on the game as well. It wasn't like cruel taking the mick, but the banter. And when she started taking the mick out of me, I was like, brilliant. You're my friend. I like that. That's brilliant. And we became friends, and we're still friends now. It's just been her best woman at her wedding. So these friends can work, but often Freshers Week is not the time that you make your really close friends. I was just very lucky indeed.
Freshers Week is quite useful. So if you are fortunate enough to be a young person who has an interest, so let's say that you have a particular sport that you enjoy, and the people that you play with, obviously you're going to kind of leave behind as you go to university. If there's a club, then obviously join in. If you don't have interests, then Freshers Week is an opportunity to see the social events and the social clubs and so forth, and they are very keen for you to join. So there's all of this opportunity. So typically, show an interest in everything and sign up to quite a lot, and then drop out later. Don't pay any fees, but drop out later. There is a serious thing about Freshers Week as well, which is that alcohol is worrisome and should be carefully avoided. Some young people are very sensible about alcohol. Some young people are not.
Hang on, you can't tell people not to drink at Freshers Week. I mean, we all know that there is great social bonding that happens as a result of the libation. It helps us reduce our inhibitions. It makes us more friendly. I mean,
Seriously.
do not end up in an ambulance or in a coma in the corner.
Quite a few kids do. I mean, seriously, I mean, this is coming possibly from a po-faced and miserable university lecturer.
You said it.
But the university authorities do worry about Freshers Week. The kids drink an awful lot and half of them fall down, so they've all got broken wrists. The ones that don't fall down get their wallets nicked. The ones that haven't even fallen down and get their wallets nicked then get chlamydia. And, alcohol is a bad thing.
Okay, wear condoms, drink in moderation, but have a laugh, really. I mean, let's face it, young people are better behaved than we were at Freshers Week. More of them don't drink now than when we were younger.
That's probably true. I just, I'm old. I just go, take your alcohol moderately. And also, alcohol's great, but if you, again, James Bond, if you are socially anxious and you want to join in with the group, have a couple of drinks, because chemically it'll make you a bit more fluid, a bit more sociable, a bit less anxious. It'll be great. Yeah, 5 drinks and you'll stumble over your words like an idiot. The girl that you're trying to chat up will think that you're a drunken arse. It won't end well, and you'll start to get depressive because alcohol's a depressant. So, okay, fair enough. Stick to 2.
Okay, good. Okay, so you're allowed 2 drinks.
2.
Don't make them a pint of cocktail. That's my advice, because those 2 drinks will cause you hell. I mean, for parents, though, this is a really stressful time. When mine went off to university last year, we live in a village. They'd been driven everywhere if they were going to a party. I knew exactly where they were at all times. And still, we are on Find My iPhone, so I can be a lovely parent sleuth anytime I want and keep tabs on my young person. But when they first went, there was one night and they'd spoken to me and they were drunk. And I was like, okay, where are you? I'm in town, club, just going in to get something to eat. So, of course, I was watching them all night walking back, because I was so worried about them because they weren't with their friends at the time. And I saw them stumbling around the streets of York, before then stumbling through a cemetery. What are you going through a cemetery for? You're an idiot. Don't do that. And I think I got to sleep about 5 a.m. when I realised they were back in their student accommodation. That's how great it can be. But actually, after that once, I got used to it. Once I was happy that not only were they responsible and looking after themselves, but actually they were walking other people home and making sure they're safe. I mean, those are really important lessons to give your young people, is to be the person that steps in. Don't let someone else be drunk on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you can combine great lessons, which is, look out for your mates, because that's what you should do. And you know, if you arrive together, then you leave together, and make sure everybody's together. Those sorts of lessons are very important, and they're very important for young people. I would hope that it's more, all the lessons that but make sure that you apply them over the next couple of weeks, because don't get giddy and forget them, rather than them being necessarily new lessons. But also, I mean, there is an element which is, so there are 2 big things happening here. There's some quite important grades. I mean, finals at university are another kind of crunch point of, you're going to get the grades necessary for getting the job or the next degree that you want or whatever. But the A-level envelope clearing university acceptance, UCAS, that's an important and, emotionally challenging, but also sort of developmentally challenging period. So is going off to university. It has to happen at some point. And, because we live in a civilized society, what happens is that we collectively have said, these events will happen between August and October, when the kids are 18. That's when it happens. So at some point you kick the baby bird out the nest. At some point they're living in a flat somewhere else, and at some point they have the key to their own front door, and at some point they're going to vomit into somebody else's waste paper basket. And society has dictated that it happens generally in the October after their 18th birthday. That's when it happens. So, it's
It
a
is
timing
always,
thing.
I think it is useful if young people do have an opportunity to drink a little bit too much before they go to uni, so they know what that's like. Just from personal experience, I was quite pleased when mine have had a little bit too much to drink, just so they know where their boundaries are, because they won't always have mum around them to hold their hair out of their face when they are vomiting up, and they'll have to rely on someone else to do that. That's a really good life trick, I think, to learn not to drink too much. And doing it before you leave the comfort of your nest is probably, dare I say it, a reasonable thing to do, but perhaps people would castigate me for that. I had friends who talked to me about the lead up to university, them getting more and more dreading of it, and then once their young people had left, of walking past their room or going into their bedroom and crying. Now, I love my children. I was not crying when they left home. I was not.
You've got to get rid of them.
And like when we left home, I don't know about you, I didn't speak to my parents. That was it. Maybe once a term, I perhaps got in contact with them. They just had to send us off. Now you're FaceTiming them, you're sending them a text or a WhatsApp, you're looking at them on Find Your iPhone. Sorry, I am a mum stalker. But, there was no need. I didn't feel bereft about them leaving that way. It felt kind of natural that's what you want your young people to do.
I think it is. And again, you take a step back and you think, it's bound to happen at some time. I don't want to wait for another 3 years before they go off and live independently. So why not now?
Well, but maybe I'm just reassured in the fact that most likely they're going to come back and live with me again till they're about 35, because they won't be able to afford to buy their own house or something. I mean, that is the reality for a lot of families now, isn't it? That these boomerang kids, they just come back and keep coming back, don't they?
Yep.
So university, we've covered that you think it is definitely a worthwhile route to do, but I've got a lot of friends whose young people, and with all levels of kind of educational ability, should we put it like that, or certainly, school-based education ability, who have chosen not to go to university. And it is sort of a real worry to young people's parents, and they're sort of like, do anything but work in a pub. And but perhaps people do need a bit more time sometimes to work out their route forward.
People need a little bit more time sometimes to work out their route forward, and modern universities are more amenable to that sort of flexible studying than ever before. I mean, there is a kind of conveyor belt of A-levels clearing university higher degree, but they're more open than they ever have been. So the flexibility for young people is greater than it ever has been. There are more kind of alternatives like apprenticeships and so forth. So people can work for a while and then find an employer that supports a degree level apprenticeship, and then maybe they will get their degree 2 years later than somebody else will get their degree, but they'll have been earning money for those 5 years, so it probably works out okay. I think that there are plenty of careers that still don't involve a degree. Personally, I think that going to university also involves doing things like learning about international politics, about living with people who come from very, very different backgrounds to yourself, thinking about the arts as well as the sciences, or thinking about the sciences as well as the arts. So I think university brings you a whole load of stuff other than the degree. And also, there's another thing about it, which is it's the socially acceptable, protected and prepared for way of kids leaving home. I mean, you either kick them out and they go and, I don't know, take a job somewhere, or you kick them out, they go to university where there's student accommodation, which is designed for students, with security guards who kind of know how things work, and with Freshers Week. And it's quite a good way of achieving that sort of independence. So, there are lots of ways in which people can find their way through in life. The universities will always be there to accept people, even up to their 60s. You can still go to university and study because they'll take your money. So all opportunities are open to people.
So my advice that I would give my younger self, or to other people who are younger, my advice that I would give to young people would be to think that life is a long game, is to not worry about decisions and needing to pivot in your teens, in your 20s, certainly, and really not even in your 30s. Plenty of people have found success later on in life. And I made a lot of decisions when I was younger that were based on a fear of worrying about things going wrong, and so staying on the same course or not making the leap and doing something different just because I thought, oh, I don't want to take a step back. Nonsense. When you're in your 20s, you're so young. We're expected now to work till we're in, our 70s quite often now. I think our young people will have to work till then. So you've definitely got time. Life is, hopefully, fingers crossed, a long game. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I would take that advice and absolutely accept it. I think, like I say, I did get the A-level grades that I wanted, and so I didn't have to be faced with any of those decisions. I think if I had taken my second choice university, I would have been very happy and would have had a very different life. If I hadn't gone to university, do you know what? I actually think I'm a reasonably competent human being, so I would have survived. It would have been fine. I would have done something different. I don't know what. I have no idea.
Probably be a billionaire right now.
I doubt it. I would have gambled it away or something. But
Says the non-gambler.
It says a non-gambler, but I would have been happy. I'd probably be running a surf shack in Thailand or something. I don't know.
I'm liking it. I would like to see those Bermuda shorts.
I'd probably be on a respirator in a UK hospital after being air evacuated from Thailand, because I would have become an overweight alcoholic bar manager in Thailand. I don't know.
Nonsense.
But and I would have enjoyed myself immensely. I mean, certainly playing the long game. I think also, so I think that there's having your eye, in that long game, having your eye on the ultimate end goals, not just which
prize.
University do I want to go to, where do I want to go to, but I think that my particular advice within that context, so in the context of playing the long game and thinking, what is it that I want for my life, what actually happens on Thursday when the results slip comes through the letterbox is it gives you information.
Email, anywhere.
It's just information. It's information which might be disappointing, but it's information that is vital to your future. Yeah. If the information is you now have a confirmed place at that university, deal with that information. If the information is you have not got a place at that confirmed university and your grades were in fact what your physics teacher did predict for you, despite now you've got some feedback, you've got some data. I'm not saying that you should not be emotional about it. You can be angry and you can be upset and you can be anxious and you can be miserable, or you can blame other people. You can do whatever emotions you like. But if you can, just step back from it and say, okay, what is this telling me? What data is this giving me, and how do I need to respond to it? At all points, what's going on is, as an organism, as a human being, what we're doing at each point in our life is thinking, how do I respond to this situation? If I'm lying on the beach next to my extremely profitable bar on the beach in Thailand, and the money's coming in and life's good, I need to think to myself, okay, this is pretty good. We'll carry on doing this then for the next X number of years, and then we'll reevaluate the situation. If the A-level results come in and I go, shit, I'm not going to get to Durham, then you think, right, what do I do in this situation? So treat it like data. It's sometimes negative data, but it's data, and deal with the situation as it comes in.
And that is our tip for the week, isn't it, Peter? Our triple T, our tip to try, as is, do something you love. If you do something you love, then you never work a day in your life. And Peter and I are finally doing something we love in our podcast with you right now. Moving on to concept of the week. What is it that you'd like to share with us this week?
So the concept of attribution theory. So when cognitive theorists, including people who do cognitive behavior therapy, they talk about how we make sense of the world. Probably one of the most important things about that is how we explain events, how we explain positive events and how we explain negative events. And there are loads of biases that can come in. So on the whole, there's something called fundamental attributional error, where on the whole, people say, that good thing that happened, that was me, that was. And the bad thing that happened was definitely not my fault. And it's just a bias. When we come to A-level results, I think that's very important because the way that we explain success or failure will shape what we do. And I think it's important to get it right, including success. So if we think that success was due to something ephemeral or less likely to be repeated, then we have less confidence in the future. It might be a nasty self-serving bias to say the reason why I did well in my A-levels is because I am intellectually superior to other people. That might be unwise because you might think, I really did quite well in my A-levels because I had some good teachers and some good parents. But the explanation for why, because if you go off to university and you go, I don't need to study because I am an intellectually superior being, then you'll fall flat on your face. Equally,
I think my eldest perhaps has a touch of that or something going on anyway, as I am trying very hard now to prepare him for his maths retake as part of his university first year.
I realised about 20 years after the fact that one of the reasons why I did well in my A-levels is because at home I had absolutely nothing to do other than revise.
Lucky so-and-so.
That probably had quite a lot to do with it. So what am I going to do today? I'll do some revision. What am I going to do tomorrow? Probably revision. What am I going to do the day after? Well, that'll be revision again. So that's probably, so the idea that I'm an intellectually superior being is probably not the attribution of my success.
I admire your commitment to the revision cause. Certainly revision was not something I enjoyed doing.
Oh, hang on, it wasn't commitment. I just literally had nothing else to do. I had nothing else to do in my life. So yeah, it was boredom that forced me into doing revision. But when it comes to failure, if people go, I've done poorly in my A-levels, I'm not going to get to the university of my choice. That's because I'm an idiot. Well, I think again, the attribution that you make for your failure is very important, because if the answer is, well, in my case, I didn't do as well in my university degree classification as I might have done. Why? Because I did no sodding work.
Exactly,
allowing me to continue to believe that I'm an intellectually superior human being.
Well, but isn't it true? Is it Einstein who said that, success is 99% perspiration and only 1% inspiration? And I think you do see that time and time again. And one of the things that I've really tried to help my young people understand in the household is just the importance of keeping going and doing that work. And, because it's all very well being able to cram and fly by the seat of your pants, but actually there's something really, really exciting about working and preparing hard for something and then achieving, isn't there?
So that leads to the sort of perfect scenario that the kid opens the email and says, excellent. Oh, I'm really pleased. And you go, well, that's because you worked really, really hard. You can have 2 alcoholic drinks to celebrate. If you've got any ideas that you would like to share with us about our show, any thoughts, any comments, or any deep dive information subjects that you would like us to go through, the email to get in touch is hello@experiencepodco.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and then you'll get to find out exactly when we've got each new episode coming out. And until next week, we hope you have a really lovely time, and good luck on Thursday. Good luck. Thank you. The Experience podcast is hosted by Hilary Jeffs and Peter Kinderman, produced by James Jones at Granary Digital. You can find us on social media, and you can get in touch via email at hello@experiencepodco.com with any questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to cover. And don't forget to leave us a review.